The new Beetle defined retro success when it arrived in 1998. But the shtick ran its course after 11 years or so, and Volkswagen has come back with something with fewer cute curves and no butt face. Let's drive the 2012 VW Beetle Turbo and check the tech. Well, here it is, the new Beetle. For 2012, they've really changed things up, and let's be entirely frank, they've de-chickified the car. It's got chunkier angles, more strong sort of edges here and there, some creases it didn't have before. The biggest thing I think you notice is the roof line. Notice how the A-pillar comes up and now takes a turn. It kinks right here to get more of a flat bar, more of kind of a slammed look, which takes away that big, goofy, iconic bubble. That's a good thing to reach out to a broader market of buyers, but to me it kind of starts to leave its whole purpose on Earth, which is to be a faithful repro of the original Beetle. That'll be your call, but to me they're starting to get a little bit far afield. Let's get inside. This is the top head unit, as we have a top trim Beetle. Top trim, and it's a turbo. This unit's got navigation first and foremost. Nice rendering, good dot pitch. The typefaces are good. It could be a little cleaner, but for a car in this price category, not bad. Of course, touchscreen, which I find quite responsive. You've also got this knob here, which depending what you're doing is going to be a rotating selector. Soft buttons here on the screen are echoed on hard buttons below them. Kind of a redundant waste of real estate, but whatever. You've got this weird interface that VW does where you kind of spin around the wheel. Sometimes there's even more choices than on the screen, in which case the whole thing rotates and gives me a headache. Now, all these new Beetles come with roughly the same array of input choices for entertainment. AM, FM, but no HD. Satellite radio is optional. I've got an optical disc slot up here. An auxiliary jack is right here. And then what they call the Volkswagen MDI, which is this guy here. You've got a pigtail. In this case, I've got a USB, but I can change it out if I unplug it from the wall of the glove box and put a different pigtail there. We've also got Bluetooth streaming on here, which is a nice touch in addition to Bluetooth calling. And all of those sources go out through an 8-speaker standard system, or you can get this premium Volkswagen system. That's the middle tier trim on these cars. Or if you get the turbo like this, you can load it up with a Fender audio system. We've got these Fender badged speakers over here. And this Fender audio system has 9 speakers, including a subwoofer. Now, because we're in a turbo, we have an optional transmission beyond a manual or a standard automatic, a DSG. This is a dual clutch gearbox in Volkswagen parlance, and your gating is like an automatic. You've got PRND and then Sport, which is a sport drive, or kick it over here to get your shiftable. On the paddles here, you do have an upshift and a downshift behind the wheel, one on each side for the different direction of shifting. We'll see how that goes on the road, but first, let's find out what puts power into that. Okay, now on these new Beetles, you've got a choice of 2 different engines. Hell, that's right. They moved that thing a few years ago. While we're here, though, this is that Fender subwoofer. It's a big boy. Now, engine's up here. Here it is. Now, this car's a turbo, so we have a different engine than most Beetles, which will have a 2.5-liter inline 5. Pretty garden variety VW stuff. This one is a 2-liter, 4-cylinder. They all sit side saddle, turbocharged, intercooled. They all drive the front wheels, no matter what Beetle you get. 200 horsepower on this one, 207 foot-pounds of torque. Gets this roughly 3,000-pound new Beetle up to 60 in about 6.8 seconds while delivering 2130 mpg. If you go without the turbo, the numbers look like this. The non-turbo Beetle 2.5-liter 5-cylinder gets you 170 horsepower and 177 foot-pounds of torque while getting the car up to 60 in 8 seconds and delivering 1 mpg better fuel economy on both counts. And as I mentioned, we have the optional DSG, but you can also get a 6-speed automatic Tiptronic gearbox on a turbo. Now, while we're all waiting for the new Beetle to come available as a new Beetle convertible, which isn't available yet, you got to make do with this optional sunroof, which is a big old piece of glass. But the problem is, when it's on the move, it doesn't have a big old piece of movement. It leaves basically a toaster slot open at the front, while all this stuff is still covered by, in our case, dirty glass. I don't know why there's such a limited retract on this. The first thing I picked up on driving this car is that they've got the DSG really well dialed in. These dual clutch gearboxes are still pretty new on the market. There aren't many that are crap anymore. It's a very satisfying gearbox. It's automatic when you want it to be and more engaged when you want it to be that as well, like a manual. But as soon as I get into the power on this car, if I'm going up a grade at all or anything like that, or if I'm in a turn, I'm getting a lot of wheel spin. I'm getting some rear up on the car so that I'm losing traction on the front tires. This is not a car for someone who's going to be driving seriously. It's not a sports car. I can feel the turbos definitely making the most of a small engine. You get this real peaky kind of a thing in terms of the power delivery. Again, it's fine for a fun little everyday driver. It's not a car you'd want to use in a lot of, sort of demanding driving where you really want to modulate the power perfectly and have a good time on the road. It's not that kind of powertrain. So all in, I got to tell you, after driving this turbo, I'm really intrigued to drive the 2.5 liter 5, which I also think is a good motor that has a different kind of power delivery that I think I prefer. Okay, let's price this 2012 Beetle. First of all, let's go totally base. Without a turbo, without any option packages, $20,500. I bring that up because a lot of folks look at this car to be somehow as thrifty and parsimonious as the original Beetle. It doesn't really occupy that same category in the market anymore, but that's where it starts. Now, on top of that, the sunroof package is $2,500, which gets you the sunroof, satellite radio, touchscreen in the center of the dash, and keyless access, as well as, of course, that nice big roof. Sound and Nav adds $1,800 for navigation and Fender audio, and some bigger wheels. Then we have the turbo cars. Those are going to add $3,600 to $3,900 on top of any of those previous trim levels I mentioned, and that of course gets you the turbo engine, a much more interesting independent front suspension, different wheels. You're also going to get a different front differential for getting power to those wheels, and a few other engineering changes. With this turbo model you get a choice of gearboxes, either 6-speed manual or a 6-speed direct shift dual clutch like we had for $1,100 more.
Hi, I'm Molly Wood, host of The Buzz Report, the show about the tech news that everybody's talking about. See it every Friday in high def at cnet.com/buzzreport.